we're going to get going. I see Romario's joined. A few more will trickle in as we get going. We're going to take about an hour with somebody that I met in Barbados, Mr. Matt Hamilton. Now, Matt is somebody who is, I think, a really fine example of what we can do in the region to achieve some brain gain as opposed to the brain drain that we are so well known for. And by brain drain, I think I've seen some heads nods there, but all of you will know it's that phenomenon where we invest in our education, and throughout the Caribbean, we have some good basic education. We have some good secondary and tertiary education. We have the University of the West Indies, which produces some great minds, really, and some of our foremost leaders. We've got, I think, at UE as well, a solid computer science and engineering program and things like that. So we've led in so many areas, economics, politics, literature, and so many things. But over and over, folks, young people in our islands tend to leave. And I think that I'm a prime example of that. I'm a child of I was born in 69 or the early 70s. So there was that whole flight generation where parents sought to take us to North America and Europe, UK for a better life and education. And some of us stayed out there, and others, after they've graduated UE, for example, sought opportunities either physically moving to the UK and North America or virtually doing the same. And what that's resulted in is a lot of our investments in our minds have left. And so that is the brain drain phenomenon. But I do believe that we're really poised for a bit of a change. And that's something that I think as well, I myself, I'm a good evidence of, having returned back to the region 3 years ago. People like Estrelita on the call, Tony, Sergeant, who's in the building there with Matt right now as well, having someone with roots in the Caribbean, family in Barbados, having gone to the United States and done her career there, also looking now to return and bridge some gaps. So we have an opportunity for that. And I wanted to take a few moments with Matt to talk about his story a little bit. And Matt, without any kind of further, why don't you kind of just tell us who you are in a nutshell? I know this is the hardest question anybody can ask anybody, right? So this is the hard one. So we talk about yourself, Matt. It's not an interview, but where are you from, first of all? Where are you from?
Where am I from? That's not probably the harder of the questions.
Oh gosh.
But recently, right, that's where I say I was originally from. But I was born in Singapore. I grew up in Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia. And anyway, but recently, nearly 5 years, I moved to Barbados. And that is now where I'm calling home, Barbados. I came here, and within about 2 weeks of being here, I was like, okay, yeah, I like this place. And originally I moved here not to form a company or build something or anything. I came here to slow down, right? I came here, my wife has a health condition and a problem with her knee that keeps dislocating. And we needed to do something with regards to that. And moving to Barbados, we tried it. I actually ended up moving out here partly after a drunken conversation with a friend of mine. And he mentioned the welcome stamp visa. I'm here in the co-working space that you helped set up and Peter Thompson set up. Peter Thompson was the architect of the welcome stamp visa. And anyway, I moved here after drunkenly applying for the visas. Ended up moving out here. My wife was like, what? And I was like, yeah, well, what? No. So anyway, we moved out here for warmer weather for her. We lived in a 3-story house, which doesn't work well if your knees don't work, which is her problem. Her knee keeps dislocating. So we moved to a single level place here in Barbados, warmer weather, pool, sea, etc. So I came here for a slower pace of life. I came here for her health, my health mentally as well. And it was just about slowing down a little bit, right? So my background, I've been a software developer for about 30 odd years now. Ran a web development agency the end of the 90s, early 2000s for a number of years. Worked for a health tech startup for a little while. Worked for IBM for a number of years. There doing some database work and then machine learning and AI stuff. I worked for a company called Ripple and worked on blockchain, cross-border payments stuff. I worked for a company called BitTensor, that's a decentralized AI system. a company called Protocol Labs behind Filecoin. People might have heard of Filecoin and IPFS, which are big decentralized storage networks, and which is Ethereum layer 3. So I did a lot of Web3, crypto.
And just everybody a favor because I get first of all, it's a really good role for me because I get to what you call the useful idiot in
Yeah.
this conversation, right? So I'm going to take a moment. Oh, well, first of all, cheers. Welcome to Barbados, Matt.
Cheers.
There you
I was
go.
up in the 246 with a bottle of the One-Eyed Man. So
That's right. And I'm in Toronto right now, seeing my wife, who I miss so much because I spent so many months in Dominica and then came up here. But I'm repping the Canadian Club. That's the 12-year Canadian Club. There you go. And we obviously won't do that at the lunchtime Tech Tuesdays, but this one is late enough so that we can do that. So welcome to, I have to say, Matt, it's really been a pleasure to see you there.
Thanks.
Back to my useful idiot bit. You talked about blockchain, Ethereum. You mentioned some of the AI type stuff that you had been doing. But first of all, I mean, just for folks who don't really get the blockchain thing, and this is something that I think comes up over and over, and we're obviously a lot of geeks in this call, but we're also going to put it out there for the broader region. What is the significance of blockchain and why did you get into that? Where did you find that so fascinating work to do?
So it was something I got into, again, slightly by accident. I've done an entire talk about how my career is a whole series of happy accidents before. But there was a guy, when I ran a web development agency, there was a guy that got into Bitcoin mining, and he was mining in the office. And as sort of a thank you, he gave me a bunch of a cryptocurrency called XRP, which is used a lot by a company called Ripple that do cross-border payments. And I mean, the big significance with blockchain, I mean, it's used in various different ways. But for example, Ripple are using XRP for cross-border payments to allow to easily send money around the world. And this is probably something that's pretty of interest and something that a lot of the people on this call have experienced. Is you're trying to send some money from here in Barbados to Canada or here to Dominica, for example. And if you're trying to go a slightly esoteric route or a not so popular route, I mean, here to Canada is probably fairly quick, but here to Dominica, for example, there's not that much liquidity in that corridor. So companies like Ripple are trying to use blockchain as a big decentralized network in which you can have liquidity on the network and enable the transfer. So Barbados dollars be converted into cryptocurrency XRP, sent across Dominica and then converted to
but Eastern Caribbean currency. Yeah.
So that's kind of one aspect of it. But I mean, in general, blockchains, the easy way to think about them is a large decentralized public ledger in which information can be recorded and it can be verified by anybody. So it's great for use where you need to record or transfer something, but you need to be able to verify it independently without relying on some centralized third party or trusted entity, right? So with file, it was to do with the recording, storage of data, right? So you could store data. So rather than using something like Google Drive or Amazon S3 or whatever for storing your data, you could store it on Filecoin, and the storage providers every 24 hours had to prove that they still have your data. And they would complete what's called a zero knowledge challenge. There's a challenge that they could complete that proved they have the data, and that would be then recorded on a blockchain. So anybody could see without actually seeing what the data is. They could see that the data is actually verifiably stored, hasn't been lost, etc. So that's kind of where it came from. So I worked in that space for quite a while, actually. Yeah.
Around what time frame were you in the blockchain space? And that was in the UK predominant?
That was in the UK and Barbados. So I moved over here while I was working with Ripple. So about 5 or 6 years, I suppose, of probably working professionally for 5 or 6 years. I was interested in it beforehand, the cryptocurrency side of things beforehand, but working professionally probably about 5 years. Yeah.
And that whole cryptocurrency, I mean, there was, of course, the initial Bitcoin craze, and then things tapered off for a while. And now everything old is new again in a big way when it comes to things like when we're talking about e-currencies or stable coins, for example, right? So taking dollars, US dollars or Barbados dollars or EC dollars and giving some kind of a record of that on the ledgers so that we can transfer that digitally without going through some of the traditional bank networks. That's got something that's become so huge again. And I think as well, very much because of we saw now in the new US administration being very friendly towards in particular. Is that something that's got you excited about the future of things like stablecoin and Bitcoin? Are you worried about that? And should we, you think, in the Caribbean be more excited about those things, or or hesitant with regards to those sorts of things?
It kind of works both ways. So, I mean, the whole idea of tokenizing a fiat currency on a blockchain was literally what the XRP ledger and what Ripple and that work. The XRP ledger was originally designed to do that. It was the first blockchain. Came after Bitcoin. It was the first blockchain to allow tokenization of assets. So this is back 2011, 2012. So good, nearly 15 years now that thing's been around, but it goes full circle. So the big problem with something like tokenizing a fiat currency or gold or any kind of physical asset or whatever is that you do have to trust somebody, because ultimately you have to trust that somebody's going to redeem that token at the end of the day, right? And with the XRP ledger, they actually call it IOUs, right? And that makes more sense because that's effectively what it is, right? If I tokenize some Barbados dollars on there and I give somebody some digital representation on a blockchain, that is an IOU that they should be able to come back to me and I can give them the physical Barbados dollars back again, right? So that's what it is. Stablecoins are an IOU. The problem being is you end up having to trust the issuer of that IOU. And so it went full circle. So for a while, everybody was excited about that. Then they were like, well, wait a minute, this means we've got to trust people, which is...
And then FTX?
And FTX happened and stuff like that, right? So people switched back to saying, okay, well, Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, these are native digital currencies that don't have a fiat representation. And so you don't have to trust any one particular entity because they're controlled by the network as a whole. So everybody went to them. And then the regulatory regime around that was pretty vague and in some cases quite hostile, which then meant that whilst you're fine if you stay in this perfect digital utopia, as you try and touch this big messy outside world, things would start to get problematic. Your currency was fine and completely safe digitally on the blockchain, but if you try and cash it out, then that's when the authorities would then be waiting for you, right? And then the authorities are starting to get a bit more receptive to these ideas. So it's now come full circle. So people are saying, okay, stable coins, again, that's the inroad in which the normal person is going to be more involved with cryptocurrencies. But it's again going back to we got to trust somebody. So it's this cycle that keeps repeating, right? And so depending upon what your views are and where you are in the cycle, then different. So, I mean, I'm somewhat excited about it in that it helps with adoption in general, and visibility and knowledge about it. But on the other hand, especially the way we've been seeing geopolitical events happen most recently, there's a lot of people that are like, well, wait a minute, one of the most biggest stablecoin that a lot of people are using, and then they're just funneling all into US dollars and US dollar stablecoins. And a lot of people go, well, wait a minute, do we really want to be tying everything to the US dollar right now? So there's a lot of move about people saying, well, okay, well, maybe that's not a good idea.
And I think that I'm a member of the Caribbean Digital Finances Executive Committee as well. And I'm not a finance person, I'm a digital person, but I understood as well that in order to ameliorate some of the barriers we have to regional trade, we need to be able to ship that money back and forth amongst ourselves a little bit more fluidly without those sorts of things. And so I think people, even like Anthony here and his colleagues at Connect would be in favor of focusing on some of these stable coins, perhaps that have some of our regional currencies in that bucket that allow us to control what we're doing.
Right. Talking to somebody here the other week, Raphael, and he was talking about how he's trying to make a payment from Barbados to one of the Eastern Caribbean dollar countries. And that's near impossible, right? If you're a merchant in Barbados and you're trying to sell to St. Lucia, for example, near impossible to, as a Barbados registered company, as a Barbados registered vendor, to take a payment in Eastern Caribbean dollars, for example, right? So that means the immediate marketplace on your doorstep is near impossible. So the irony being is that everybody then flips back to say US dollars. Now, the Barbados dollar is pegged to the US dollar anyway, so maybe that's not such a big deal, but it highlights the issue that even though you might be so close physically, I mean, St. Louis just a stone's throw away from here, right? But trying to do business between then becomes very difficult. When you look at that as the Caribbean space as a whole, how many different currencies do you have between the Barbados dollar, the Eastern dollars, all the South American, Central American currencies as well that you have literally on the other side of the Caribbean Sea? It's got to be the little things actually make it quite difficult to do what you might think might be a simple transaction, right?
Right. We had a question in the chat with regards to technology behind BeamPay, which is supposed to solve this problem. They got little boxes that are messing with my view. Average Joe or Jill. So BeamPay, I have not actually gotten into much of the details of Pay, but I understood that we are using some of the traditional traditional payment systems in BeamPay. So that's probably not blockchain based. And by the way, anybody on the chat in the group here, you're welcome to put something in the chat. And maybe in about 10 minutes as well, we're going to just open up. You can put your hand up as well and just ask Matt a question. But is that your understanding too, by the way, that it's space?
It's based around the central government, the central bank here clearing it. So if you're in Barbados, you may be familiar with First Pay that the CIBC have that allows you very easily to make a payment to another person just by mobile number. It's that, but for all the banks in Barbados. Plus, it includes a digital wallet. So for people who are traditionally unbanked, can potentially use that as well. So it combines some aspects of that, aspects of some people might be familiar with money, for example, in Barbados. But the biggest problem that N-Money had, my understanding, was that the retail banks wouldn't let them connect into the retail bank. So you couldn't send a payment from Scotia or whatever to an N-Money wallet because they didn't want to have anything to do with it. Now, Pay is the same thing, but run by the central bank, right? So, of course, they're going to allow that. Again, it's controlled by the central bank. Yeah. Okay.
Now, Matt, I don't want to take too much time on because I started the blockchain thing, okay? And because I have this pet thing with the CDF and my digital finance bit, and I think it's so important because it unlocks so much. But you mentioned a little while ago another one of our common friends, Raphael, who happens to be in payments as well with FlexiCash and the stuff that he's doing with the Carib Guide and whatnot. Raphael and you have something in common that I really appreciate. Two things. First of all, Raphael is also a foreign national that I would like to call part of our ally class. You know, folks who moved, Raphael in this case from Poland, you from the UK, who came to visit because you had some interests and then fell in love with the place and decided to make it home. So would love to hear a little bit more about what you love about the place, because I've also seen something with regards to you that you didn't just come in and, you know, be a remote worker. You started to really embed yourself in Bajan culture, and some of the applications that you've actually developed really speak to very much to, I think, issues that you saw. And one of the things that you and Raf have in common as well is that you didn't wait for anybody. You didn't wait for anybody's permission. You saw a problem. You said, I know something. I got this little skill set. I can do something about that. And you just went ahead and did it. And I really appreciate that kind of initiative. Tell me a little bit about why you fell in love with Barbados. Was it easy for you to get integrated into it? And then maybe some of the solutions that you found and the problems that you were addressing when you found this. A lot in one's question. I can bring you back down that path. Go ahead.
So, okay. So, like I said, I moved here nearly 5 years ago. Never been to Barbados before. This is completely a blind move. Signed a contract on a house that I've not even seen apart from in photos.
Oh my God.
Luckily, liked it enough that we've just recently bought it off of the landlady who is selling it. So again, blind luck. But for me, I really don't know how it started. So I use Twitter a lot, right? And I was pretty active on Twitter beforehand. When I actually arrived in Barbados, I had more Twitter followers than the Prime Minister Mia Motley did, for example, right?
Wow.
She's overtaken me now because she's doing a lot of stuff on the world stage. But anyway, that was my claim to fame when I arrived here. And anyway, I just got on Twitter and I couldn't find anybody here in Barbados on Twitter. Most people use Instagram. And then I found one person, then from them another person. And I started a list on Twitter of Barbados Twitter people, and it's got about 600 people on it now. So, but I just started chatting away there, right? And people were very receptive. I started to try and learn, right? Partly for my own ability to understand what the barber and the busman and whatever are saying, my house lady and that. But I started doing it. And what was so funny was people really seemed to respect
They loved it.
Right. They were loving it.
They loved it.
Yeah.
I know.
There was somebody from somewhere else in the world that said, oh, this is cultural appropriation. I said, you'd probably be the first person to complain that people aren't integrating, right? So anyway, I'm learning Bajan culture. And then through there, I discovered and started a great time going to events. I learned so much about Bajan culture through the music and through the food. And I live in just a residential area in Barbados, right? My thinking was I don't want to live in some gated community. I've moved out the UK to get out of I don't want to sit next to a whole bunch of people that I've just moved away from, if that makes sense. And yeah, so I just started chat away, and somehow my wife still is amazed by it. She's like, how did you become so popular in Barbados? I don't get it. But I would go around now. Okay, this is a couple of things. Like for the first 2 years, I just had a bike. I used to around on a Dutch cargo bike. If people know what a bike is, a Dutch cargo bike, in
Yeah.
terms, it looks like a
You got noticed for this quite a bit as well.
yeah,
Right?
it looks
Yeah.
like wine ton of wheelbarrow, right? And I ended up on the front page of the Barbados newspaper as a picture of me and my wife cycling along. And whenever I get school kids by the side of the street, they're like, hey, I will borrow that one, right? And then I ended up buying an electric mini. So I've got a bright lilac electric mini. I drive around again. Pretty easy to spot me there, right? So people going, you've seen it, right? Okay, yeah. So just hearing the audience, somebody said about seeing me driving around, and so I don't know. It's just these little bits and pieces that became a thing, and I started to get to know people and chat to people. Anyway, there was a few random things I started noticing I was trying to sort out. So the first one was I created a website called Outside 246. And that was to do with the fact that I was looking for events in Barbados. Again, I want to go to the lines and everything going on, but everything was on Instagram. And unless you followed the right people on Instagram, you wouldn't get shown what the events were. And even so, you have to timeline or look and see here or wherever. So I created a site. This is about a year ago now, I think. I created a website called weoutside246.com, and it uses AI and it trawls Instagram and it finds all of the events, because most events have a poster. The poster has a picture of the artist, the name, the venue, the time, etc. on there. And so I used AI to I created an autonomous agent that goes around Instagram and finds all of these events, right?
Yes.
And it will go to one particular artist, and the artist will tag in the venue. So then go look at the venue, and then from the venue, tag another artist. And it works its way around. I think it's following about 700 Instagram accounts in Barbados now. But it just runs every few hours. It just goes and trawls through Instagram, finds them all, brings them all, and presents them all on one timeline. And so you can go through and see what's going on at the moment. And you can say, okay, I'm looking for breakfast parties, or I'm looking for something on this particular date, and find out what's going on. Now, come crop over, for people who are not from the Caribbean, the crop over is a massive thing here, big annual festival here that goes on, and lots of events, right? I mean, it's several weeks of just nonstop partying going on. And so it was finding 30 events a day that were showing up on there. It was crazy. So I built that, and people really started liking that, right? And then the next thing I made was, so my daughter, I've got an elder daughter back in the UK who's 30. She was working for a company. She was seeing that AI was taking over her job there. She worked in customer service, and she was like, hey, I'm really getting a bit despondent. I don't know what to do. And I said, well, look, you got two options here. One, you can let AI take over your job, or two, you can grab the bull by the horns and you can learn AI stuff, right? And she'd started software development. And I said, right, well, we're going to sit down and we're going to build something. And we had this idea, randomly, this idea about something that would extract information from YouTube videos. So if you think about it, you have a lot of YouTube channels on a particular topic. So you'll have a YouTube channel on fly fishing, a YouTube channel on crocheting, a YouTube channel on motorbikes, or whatever it might be, right? And my thinking was that there's a lot of information within there. Now, what if we could take all that information and allow you to search it? So you could say, okay, tell me what the best set of headphones under $100 is, right? And look through the videos. Well, about that time, I had a sort of random encounter. And again, actually, Shannon, who's on the call here, was involved in this. He was there at the time.
Right on.
And I was talking about, hey, well, we could use this to search laws, because there was another person on Twitter in Barbados, a lawyer, who said there's no way to search all of the current laws. And I said, okay, we could do that. But then we could use the same technology we were developing to search through the parliamentary recordings, because every session in Parliament is recorded. But you're not going to sit through 4 hours of a parliamentary session of yada, 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 right? You just want to find out what's going on and what's been said before. And Shannon had a particular vernacular name for this, which was, I'll tell people afterwards if they want, but I'll keep it clean here. But anyway, we ended up taking this
I can beep
idea.
it out. I can beep it out in the recording, and everybody else on it.
Yeah. So my daughter and I worked on this idea of, okay, well, let's record these parliamentary transcripts. And we did it as part of a hackathon together. Her and I worked together on this. We submitted it to a hackathon with Google, this idea, and people started to notice it, right? And I got a call actually from the Minister of Innovation, Science and Technology here in Barbados, Senator Jonathan Reed. And he was like, hey, that looks really interesting. We should try some sort of collaboration. Anyway, I ended up working after a while. Another guy saw a guy called Mark Boyce, who is the CEO of this, of GovTech in Barbados.
Yeah, GovTech, sorry, yes.
Yeah. So I ended up working with GovTech and alongside again, alongside Shannon. So we ended up working together, working on bootstrapping. I was there for just a 3-month contract, working on there. So it was this year of taking existing information and making it more readily accessible. So the Instagram data was all there. You couldn't really access the parliamentary data, the parliamentary sessions. They were all there, but you're not going to sit and look through 4 hours to find that needle in a haystack of what is the current discussions going on about funding sport in schools, or what is the discussions about the immigration reform, or whatever it might be. Right? So I created these sites to allow people to find that a lot more easily. And then
I think that there's something to be said both for, first of all, there's a few things, I think a few lessons that I'm just getting from that, right? First of all, for anybody who's thinking about coming to check out Barbados or making the move, and me myself, even as a son of the Caribbean, I spent maybe a year and a half working on my previous company, going to those remotely from there. And I was really in the computer screen a lot, and I didn't really get out and everything else. And it was only when I joined the chamber and started to get out and involved is when you really start to feel integrated and you start to understand a lot more. And I think anybody who's into software, who knows anything about user experience, our friend Tony, who's there, understands you need to be immersed in the problem space that your people are feeling in order to come up with good solutions, but also just to have a happy and a good life and to feel embraced by a culture. I think that's one thing just from the move perspective for anybody who's thinking about it. Don't be passive. Don't think that everybody's just going to embrace you. I mean, you got to get out there and make your own way. But also, I think there's another lesson there that and I worry about the future of software and product and everything else as well. But I do think, and maybe you'll comment on this, because things are shifting so swiftly from this Google search driven thing to maybe an AI agent telling you, oh, this is for that. But I do think that there's also a space for people who understand the human beings involved in their problem and exactly how they want to use it and why they want to use it and what they want it to feel like. That's really important. And then secondarily, I also think you talk about Instagram. Well, Instagram is owned by Mark Zuckerberg, right? And your platform is owned by somebody who's made Barbados their home. And I think those are two different things. And maybe you won't say the latter part, but I'll say that it's important for us to understand how important it is to start to use and invest in things that are made by people who live where we are, who have decided to be taxable where we live, all of those sorts of things. So why don't you I'm throwing you a softball, so why don't you run with that one?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's 2 latest projects I've done that I think really demonstrate that. So I've got one called You're Getting True, yougettingtrue.com. For those that don't know, You're Getting True is the phrase for, are you being served, right? You walk into a shop and somebody says, You're Getting True. It's, are you being served? Are you finding what you want, right? So I created a website, yougettingtrue.com, that indexes 350,000 products in Barbados, right? Again, using the existing websites, it goes and crawls the existing websites. So your hardware stores, your supermarkets, your smaller boutiques, etc., and brings all the information together. So all of this was public information. It's all out there. But the big thing being is that for the likes, so the chink in the armor here, the thing that I'm going for, there was a guy called Blair Enns way back I think he's still around doing stuff, but end of the 90s, early 2000s, wrote a book called Win Without Pitching. And he always said that you can't market to everybody. Marketing to everybody is marketing to nobody, right? You've got to find a specific thing, right? And with You Get True, the point was that the big players, the Googles and that, are not interested in 300,000 people on 164 square miles, right? So there isn't the infrastructure. I use infrastructure in the very loosest terms here for search, for product, etc. But to recognize as well that Barbados culture doesn't really do that anyway in a lot of cases. Because it's such a small island, you're far better just finding asking somebody, well, who do you know that does this, or where do you go to get that? I would ask my house lady, where do I get charcoal for the barbecue? She's like, oh, well, you go down to such a street and there's down behind Bridgetown and there's in the third corner that has
by the big coconut tree.
Right. Right. And that's the way things are here, right? So the products that people like Google are creating are meant for a much more defined world in which they have clean APIs, product data is there, and they're big enough to say, so Google are big enough to say, okay, well, you do things our way, right? And we will
Yeah.
index your site, right? People, they will fully know you create your metadata on your website to keep Google happy, right? And to make sure that people can find you. So you play by their rules. But because Google don't particularly do much in Barbados, and as somebody, a good friend of mine, Martin, who's here also, welcomes, who's involved in a lot of search engine optimization, he said, well, there's no google.bb.
Yeah.
So you can tell that the Barbados is not on their tier one list.
No.
So the point was with You Get True was to create something that could deal with the messy world of commerce in Barbados, right? Because commerce happens. And this is a subtle point, and I think the big mistake that a lot of people have tried to build marketplaces. And when you build a marketplace, you start off with an empty slate, and you've got to go around and say, well, will you list your products on my marketplace? And people will say, well, why should I do that when nobody's
coming there? And why should I come there when there's no products on your marketplace? And now you have the network problem.
Exactly. So you've got this cold start problem, this catch-22 of how do you deal with this, right? So the distinction being is I'm not trying to build a marketplace. I'm building infrastructure for discoverability. That's what I'm building, right? I'm building something that allows somebody to say, okay, I need to find a new microwave, or I want to buy a phone, or I need a widget, or I need a blue dress for an event, or I need somebody who's trying to find pectin the other day because they want to make jam. And they're like, where do I find pectin? Well, you go onto You Get True, type in pectin, and sure enough, it comes up and says, okay, this is the supermarket stuff. Pectin, right? So that's how that came about. It was scratching my own itch, right? It was, I needed to find some bolts for something and I couldn't find them. I went to,
and this is one of the greatest ways to come up with a solution, is solve a problem for yourself, because there's probably people like you.
Right. So I went to,
unless you're a real freak, which you might be, but also still with some certain common problems.
Yeah, but I mean, I've been amazed at the number of people. So I mean, You Get has not had any real marketing as such, and there's 1,000 searches a day happening on that site now.
Wow.
So
on an island of 300,000, less than, wow.
The visitors are return visitors, and of the people that hit the site, not even the people that do a search, but of the people that hit the site, 22% of them go right the way through and end up on a vendor's website to go and look for the product, right?
What's your plan? You're going to monetize that? Because the people who should advertise on You Get need to hear that. That's an incredible click-through rate.
Yeah, 22%. That's an order of magnitude more than
that is crazy. That is way better than Facebook. That's way better than any of the platforms I've heard about.
Exactly. If you get 2%, you're happy. 22%, this is it. So that's the next phase of this, is to look at monetization. And there's a whole load of different avenues that I'm looking at: advertising, partnering with media agencies here, a lot of extra value-added services on top.
Yes.
Because once I built the site and we can index the big stores, but then this comes back to your point here, the realization that the majority of vendors don't have a website. So I'm here in Hayman's Market, right? This is where this co-working space is. For people that don't know, Hayman's Market is an old sugar factory that's been converted into an indoor market. And there's, 50 vendors maybe downstairs doing food, crafts, art, all sorts of pieces. Now, of those 50, I think I found 2 that have a website. Right. Now, the reason being is, even as somebody that used to run a web development agency, I would say to most vendors in Barbados don't get a website. There's no need, right? Mostly what they have is an Instagram account, because they can take pretty pictures of their products, put them on there, and that's where people look, right? So that was a realization. So I then added Instagram accounts into You Getting True as well. So if you go on there and you search for, I'm looking for a handmade purse, or I'm looking for a massage therapist, or somebody to unclog the drains, or whatever it might be, so both products and services, it'll come up with the Instagram profile of them. Because again, if you've ever tried to search on Instagram, you can't search unless somebody literally has the name, unless it's Bob's Drain Unblocking as their title, and you search for drain unblocking, you're not going to find them, right? So You Get uses, it reads their profile, it reads the last 20 posts they've made, it analyzes the images, the text, everything, and builds a new profile for them to search through.
It's
So that when
awesome.
you go and search for, I'm looking for whatever acrylic nails or whatever it might be, or, it will find it because it'll find, okay, here's a nail salon. They do this, they do that. They probably do acrylic nails because they also do this other nails, whatever. So it's using semantic search and AI to deal with the big, messy.
Remove that barrier for those small micro. And by the way, that strategy, I mean, you're doing it specifically for Barbados, but that particular strategy is something that is so applicable right throughout this region. I think it's well over 70, north of 70, 80, 90% of the small, I think it's somewhere between 70 and 80. Micro, small business and informal economy participants are our economy throughout the region. And so we're not going to need the sorts of solutions that you need here in Toronto, in the Caribbean. So there is that opportunity. And I'll also say, Matt, both with what you're doing there to take some of, I love the fact that you're leveraging the big boys' data right now. I hope they don't hear too much and they try to shut off your feeds. But if they do, I hope everybody else should contribute the data anyway, because
Yeah.
data is the oil. But I think that it's also the aspect of having something that is ours. I say as well, or Anthony rather, you asked about the parliamentary side. It is you hear them, so YUHDEM. And with things like that, there's also a current there, I think, about the empowerment of the citizen, because it is so easy for somebody to stand up in parliament, whether they be in government or opposition, and make promises to us as citizens and us to forget about it. But we can go to that site and ask, what did they say about this? And I think that's an important point. Go ahead.
Caveat that the site is not responding correctly at the moment for you here, Dan. I've rebuilt today actually, and I was trying to get it up before this show, but it's not quite there because there's an election going on in Barbados at the moment. So it's really pertinent to get.
It's going to be handy. And by the time I get this thing back up on the site and in social media and replay, it'll all be.
Redo it then.
Yeah, you'll have it going by then, Matt. But I mean, I think that the point being the understanding of the culture led to the understanding of the problem, which really uncovered human value, that I think insulates us in this AI age. And that's another thing that I think is really important, that the next set of solutions, anybody here, I said this to a number of young people and some of them on the call right now that I've been mentoring over the time, is that things have really changed. It's changing from a commodity code thing to, do you understand human beings problem? And I know that's another part. One of the things, there's two things I want you to do before we open up for some questions with our last 10 minutes. You also have some stuff that are dealing with learning or psychologically divergent people as an understanding people problem. And also the last thing I would say is, before we open for some questions, is when you're going to rate the transition. I know you did this totally on a roll of the dice, but if you have to rate the transition for those who we're going to send this to in the UK and in Canada and is this something that they should think of? And why should they think of it when they know they can make a lot more money in Canada, the US, why should they think about it? But just talk about the neurodivergent solutions that you made first, and then what's your recommendation for those other people? And folks, if you're on the call and you want to ask Matt some questions, I've done enough talking. You can ask him some questions too before we wrap.
Yeah, so the other app that I created most recently is called Tali, Tali, and they're doing talktotali.ai. Now, again, this was another scratch your own thing. Late in my life, I'm 48 now, late in my life, I realized that I probably have ADHD. My wife would actually say, yeah, you've probably had it for a while, right? A lot of things add up here. But so comes down to, is known as the curb cut effect. I created a solution specifically for people with ADHD to track tasks. And this comes back to the human side of things as well, right? So Tali lives entirely within WhatsApp. There's literally no interface. It's in WhatsApp, right? So the whole idea being is, what is the simplest app you could build? What is the simplest interface? Well, no interface, right? So it's built within WhatsApp, and you just converse with it like you would converse with any friend or whatever. You send it a message, you say, hey, what am I going to do today? And it'll be like, hey, well, you said that you were going to wash the dog and you were going to replace the gutters. You've got to do this bit of programming work. You've got to do this, and this, or whatever, right? So for me, it was something I built, again, scratch my own itch. It was to help me because my brain is going off in so many different directions and I'm forgetting what I'm doing. But it has the concept of contexts as well. So it knows that something is something you could do at home, whereas this is something you could do on a laptop There's something I could do on a phone. This is an errand I need to do. And it's aware of dependencies. So if I say, okay, I need to go to the hardware store and buy a new pole and I need to put the new pole up at home, then it realizes that and I need to measure it before I go. There's 3 different tasks there. I need to measure the pole that I can only do at home. I need to go and buy a pole that I can only do in the store. And I need to install it, which I can only do back at home. Now, those are 3 tasks with a fairly strict dependency on each other, right? And so don't tell me to install the pole unless you know that I've already gone and bought it, right? So
Yeah.
tries to really reduce the information overload. And it's a little conversational thing. It'll give you a little bit of a pep talk as well. Actually, if I can, let's see if this works here. If I just share my screen, let's see if this is going to share my whole screen here.
Yes, we got you.
Right. So I don't know whether people can see it
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, we see your WhatsApp with Tali.
Yeah. So I was saying, hey, look, morning. And it's like, okay, morning, cool. You're going to be in Haymans. Today's focus is getting this done. Got a fireside chat later. And so this is my conversation with Tali going on, right?
Mhm.
Right. It's like, okay, maybe you should go and get a drink and get yourself ready for the fireside chat, right? So
Nice.
take a quick breather, maybe grab some water. Good luck. I'm
So will
excited.
Tali then just send you a message telling you you got to start doing this, get ready for this thing?
So at the moment, it won't proactively send you a message. That's just down to a quirk with WhatsApp's API. But
Right.
it will be able to do that soon. At the moment, it can only respond to you. So I start off the day, I say good morning to it, and it comes back and says, okay, this is what I'm doing, and the nation starts there. So, and this is you get, so you can search here for stuff, and it goes and finds things here for you, so people can see that as well on there.
Matt, brother, so I just want to say, first of all, I've tooted your horn a lot throughout the thing, and I want people to check out youhearthem.com, which is Matt's going to, by the time you hear this on social, or at least the segment that includes this, me telling you this, Matt will already send me saying it's ready. So Gettin has been an amazing success. I've heard so many good things about it. I mean, I myself needed it the moment that I arrived in Barbados, and when I'm back there again, hopefully next month, I'm going to definitely be needing it for several things. And then Tali, I know you were in a pre-launch alpha stage with Tali. I'm not sure where you are with that right now, but I did try it on my WhatsApp, at least a few conversations, just like, hi, how you doing thing. And I just love the concept of the interface. So Matt, I mean, the innovative spirit, obviously, thumbs up for that, the technical bits of that, obviously. But more than anything else, I really want to underscore that it is, even though you're in blockchain and AI and people want to view you as this geek, but the whole thing that sets you apart here is that humanity aspect and focusing on being human and contributing and understanding. And I've got to say this, and I'll say this, maybe I don't know if it's an uncomfortable thing to say, but I do love it when I see folks from Europe and North America, white people in particular, who come and understand the culture and decide you're going to commit to that journey before you try to preach at people. And that is exactly the attitude. You need to have both a great experience yourself and to really contribute to the place that you come to. And that yields something that is productive in many respects. I mean, I know for myself that, especially as we're in the neighborhood, Matt, in terms of age, and especially after you go through a career, it's more than just a paycheck. It is, am I contributing? Does what I do matter? And that is something that you cannot get just from a check alone, on that understanding that something matters. So we really want to commend you on that and all that you've been doing for Barbados and by extension, the Caribbean as well. So yes, so again, give me your assessment. And we have a few minutes left and we will linger on if people have questions as well. But so what's your product review on Barbados move, Matt? Recommend?
For me personally, best thing ever, right? And my wife is just like, this was such a good move. It seems like worlds apart when we were back in the. Now, obviously, everybody's circumstances are different.
Right.
We came here with our 10-year-old daughter. She absolutely loved it, although she has gone back to the UK to go to boarding school in the UK now because she's big into theatre arts and wanted to go to a place from big theatre school. But she had a great time here as well. Now, for us, it's just been fantastic. Now, lucky enough to be able to work remotely. If you are somebody who's not able to do that, or you work in a very hands-on profession, you're a dentist or whatever, then coming here might be a bit harder because getting a work permit here is very difficult for that stuff. under the welcome stamp, I'm actually working remotely. So that's able to do that, which is very fortunate. Not everybody's able to develop that thing. But if you are able to, yeah, just come to Barbados. Even if you just come for a year, experience it. It's a fantastic place.
Absolutely. And with that, I'm going to open up for questions. I'll also just tag on to the end of that we have an exciting announcement with the DX Alliance. So we recently signed a contract with the Caribbean Export Development Agency to create a database and community of digital professionals throughout the region in the diaspora. And we also want to make sure we include allies like our friends Matt and Raphael who are interested in that journey. So go to dxalliance.com/membership and put your name in there. We are going to be launching something on a platform called, it means together in Creole. There'll be a community there. So we're happy to be working with Caribbean Export, the University of the West Indies, and the CTU on that. So everybody who wants to, especially if you're in digital and you can do these things remote, please put your name in there and be part of this movement. Contribute like Matt, because let me tell you, this region needs you. We will appreciate you so much. So yeah, I see you put yourself off of mute and you're on camera. You must have something to say. Anybody else put your hand up? Ask Matt some questions or make some
I
comments.
am smiling from ear to ear. Firstly, it's so exciting to hear people talk about the importance of data. I have been battling with some of the biggest companies in the UK to use data to their advantage as of late, literally having to turn around £1 billion companies as a result of just simply using the data that they already had access to. Also, the ability to actually dig deep and understand the culture. You get a lot of people that travel to Barbados and don't bother. And I think that is, for me, that's one of the utmost importance, to understand the actual culture. Would love the opportunity to work with you, Matt, and contribute just to ensure. I've been in customer service for more than 20 years, running operations based around what I call the customer's voice. Especially with there's two types of customers. So you've got the customer that actually sourcing the product, and then what I call the internal customers, which is the actual vendors, and ensuring that that journey is as smooth as possible. Been back and forth in Barbados for many, many years since a young child. It has been many, many years now. But just to ensure that that trust is continued so that we can continue the growth of what you've already started. I think for the diaspora to gain trust in what have to offer, which is quite a great deal, but also for the trust that we're actually supporting them in promoting what they have to offer and ensuring that they're accessible on a global scale is very, very important to me. So I would love the opportunity to work with you on that. Also, the ability to learn. I know a bit, but not a lot, but it's actually fun. I'm probably what my colleagues call me a data geek, and I'm not even bothered by it anymore. But that sounded like so much fun. And the way you actually manipulated to get the information that you required to solve the issue, that was amazing. I am due to be back home. I call Barbados home, even though I am due to be back home end of this month, beginning of next. So I would love to collaborate in some shape or form, even if it's just to use my experience to add to the cause. So yeah.
Definitely, let's do it. Let's do it when you hear me.
Absolutely. So I'll be happy to pass along you guys' emails together. I've got everybody's email on that thread. If you are interested in reaching out to Matt, just message me on dennis@dxalliance.org. I'll clear that with him and we'll make that connection. Is there anybody else who'd want to have a comment, question before we wrap it up? Going once.
I'll comment.
Yes.
Hi, so I think, Matt, again, nice to actually hear you conversate and in person, well, digitally. So my name is Dario Calendar, and it looks like we were creating something similar at the same time. So I actually created something called oneofakindmarket.com. Yeah, it uses AI to pull Instagram accounts to create, I don't want to use the term marketplace, but to allow for consumers to be able to find products. So I just found it interesting that you mentioned that I was working on that, and we actually ended up, I think, launching around the same time.
Okay, cool. Well, I
Well,
haven't.
definitely. I mean, we need to. The one thing I remember, I mean, we need we need as many people tackling these problems as we can, and we're just gonna find a niche. We're gonna somehow get to the right solutions, and as well, the spirit of collaboration as well. I think that's really important, especially in the markets that we are. I also think that, by the way, as we solve a problem for Barbados, you're also doing a problem that might be applicable to Grenada or Dominica or somewhere else throughout the region, somewhere in Africa, some small town there in the global south. So let's keep in one of the things that I know about entrepreneurs or the entrepreneurial spirit. Sometimes we hold some of our things too close to the vest. I've loved about Matt throughout the journey that I've seen him as he's gotten stuff half baked, he's thrown it out into the chat and he said, check this out. Well, here's what I made. And I have this idea and I don't even know where it's going, but share your ideas, talk to people, collaborate with folks. Let's get out of the scarcity mentality and into the collaboration mentality, because that's how we're going to make progress. Like my friend Shannon just said in the chat, it's great to just take the initiative and to get the stuff done, because at the end of the day, all of the talk that we can do is not going to move the needle, but writing some code, releasing some stuff and seeing what people think about it is what makes the things actually happen. We're at time, so I'm going to officially close it off. I just topped up my Canadian club, and folks of you who are there, and if you want to linger, I think Tony might be a good lingerer for after a drink. She probably smiled about that because she knows. I know. She knows I know. All right. So, Matt, I'm going to raise a glass to you, brother. Welcome to the Caribbean. Welcome to Barbados. It is such a pleasure to have you. Thanks for showing up, brother. Here's to you.
Yes, thanks
Cheers.
for having
All
having
right.
me.
And this one's to the rest of you. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. As always, thank you for showing up for each other. Let's keep showing up for each other. Take care.
Yeah, cool. I can just wrap up with a funny story if there's anybody still on.
Yeah.
So I recently joined TikTok. Like I said, I'm big on Twitter, but I joined Instagram for a bit, and now I've finally been dragged kicking and screaming onto TikTok because people are talking about you getting true and saying actually that's where a lot of the influencers are and where you're going to reach a lot more of the local audience. So I went on there, and a friend of mine, Carla, runs a store called Barbadian Easter. Some people may know. She does a lot of great local art stickers and stuff like that. And she said, well, just start doing a bit of your day in a life type stuff.
Yeah.
Drive around, I go paddleboarding with my dogs. A lot of people might have seen me paddleboard. They see a guy on a paddleboard with dogs. That's so, yeah. And she was like, just do some stuff there. Anyway, I did a few bits and pieces on TikTok, the first couple of videos. And the most amazing thing was I got about 3 or 4 comments from people that said, I didn't expect you to have a British accent. I thought you would. And that's the Turing test.
That felt great. It's the expat Turing test.
The code. And so that was quite an interesting thing. There's quite a few people like, wait a minute, I didn't expect to have a British accent.
Embrace it, bro. I mean, that's the thing. You got to embrace the place that you've adopted. Hopefully parents embrace their adopted children. You embrace a country when you adopt it. That's exactly it. So yeah, Matt, for sure. In many ways, in your short period that you've done, you've gone through the Caribbean crash course. And I think that's a wonderful thing. And more than anything else, practically speaking, it's great to have all of the superficial stuff, but you've gone and done things like reported for work at building solutions for people to solve real problems. And that is what we actually need. We can talk all we want, but when you start solving problems for people, that's what we need in this region. And that's what I really appreciate about you and this movement, hopefully, that we're going to start together. So folks, check out, if you are somebody who wants to make that transition, Matt has given a ringing endorsement to the product review of moving to the Caribbean. And I think that I want to encourage you to think about that as well. Follow us on the dxalliance.org/membership to keep abreast of it. We're going to be launching, I've already started a radio show on DBS Radio and now in talks with some other outlets called The Revolution. So it's therevolution.live. We'll be trying to connect some of the dots with regards to some of the things we need to get done in terms of digital sovereignty, the brain gain instead of the brain drain, and having some of our own platforms so that we can protect our digital frontiers. All of these things are incredibly important. If you turn on the news, if you watch CNN, you will know that these are strategically important things if we are going to call ourselves independent people in this region. So, Matt, great to have you as an ally in this journey together, brother.
Cheers, Dan.
All right. Thanks for showing up for each other. You guys have a good night. I wish I was at Haman's to walk over to the social with you right now. But you enjoy your evening, man.
Cheers.
All
Dan.
right.
Bye.
Take care. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.